I'm going to try to get through this quick. I saw this post and I want to read through it with you. Big shout out to Chloe Cole. We had Chloe Cole when I was on The Blaze with, of course, Sarah Gonzalez. And we had her on talking about her experience as a detransitioner. For you guys that do not know, she is a person that unfortunately, through various, medical, I have my gripes with, let's say, how they handle this particular subject with the youth. Okay. She had a double mastectomy before she was able to, even 18, she was 16, if I'm not 15, 16, but she had that double mastectomy. And, she's detransitioning and she's 18 now, if I'm not mistaken. And she had some interesting things to say on her Twitter, and I want to show you guys here. She says, I'm bringing the receipts. It's time I destroy a narrative yet again. The New York Times article, Maggie Astor wrote about me, beginning with a disingenuous title, How Few Stories Feel the Push to Restrict Gender Transition Care. Again, it's just crazy that we're even having this conversation. You'd think that it'd be a no-brainer among anybody on any political, social viewpoint or spectrum that leaving children out of that and having them make those, making decisions even on their behalf is insane when it comes to something this drastic, is life-altering, and you'd at least like to give them the decision to be making as an adult, as opposed to doing this irreversible damage when they are children. Okay, should be just go show fast things accelerate, because we were never having this conversation. Hell, even 5 years ago, 5 years ago, we were not having this discussion. So apparently New York Times wrote an article, and they probably highlighted her and other detransitioners, saying that this is people that highlight this stuff or somehow looking at it negatively. And she says, I take issues with Astor's flagrant use of the word regret, which implies a benign mistake like a bad tattoo, something I wasn't even allowed to get until I turned 18 last year. And I've made this point many, many times. For some reason, they think that it's acceptable to do things such as be a top or bottom surgery to young people, and they're not even old enough to do various other things, and we don't accept them with that responsibility. She mentions like tattoos, various other things that you don't allow people of that age to do, but for whatever reason, cutting them, doing irreversible damage, mutilation is somehow permissible. He says, no, I was a child when I was misinformed by adults who convinced me to permanently alter my body. And that's the point that I have been making. Yes, they've hijacked it to try to make it appear that everybody has look, people might think you're weird. Make no mistake. Even if you're an adult and you do something like that, people may think that you're weird for doing so. But I believe that the general consensus is that at least as an individual, you have the right, so as long as you're not forcing people into it, you're not forcing people to have to embrace and accept that. People will at least say that as an individual, you have the right to do that. The line, however, is drawn with children, and they can't consent. And I like how she, of course, words it in the honest way. And that is that, look, these were adults, be it the medical staff, be it even in the parent sense, that allowed her, as a child, of course, you trust these adults to make decisions and lead you, because that's really the job of definitely a parent and all that. You're trying to preserve the innocence of this child, and they let her down. I learned through social media when I was 11 about boys and girls being trapped in the wrong body, an impossibility that should never have been affirmed by doctors. I was told by professionals whom I trusted that I have a medical condition that required medical treatment. Not only that, but my parents were emotionally manipulated. She talked about this on the show that I was on. Presented with a false dilemma. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? And this is the part. I know that these weird gay furries and VTubers that had an issue with my other videos on this topic. I drove that point home, how they use these sort of emotional manipulative tactic by trying to weaponize self-harm. And that is so despicable. It's disgusting, but they absolutely do that. And that's what happened to her. And that's how the medical institutions presented as to these parents, like, hey, even though the data is very questionable on this and it's debatable, let's say that, And that is that, well, if you do not go through with this care, and I use that term loosely, then they risk doing something to themselves because you haven't allowed them to live this experience out even at a youth. And like I said, that data is debatable when you consider those rates, even after transition. But that is a despicable thing, and they've done that. And they've gained a lot of ground into manipulating not just parents, but really a large percent of the populace by doing that and saying that, well, you don't want them to do something to themselves, so you have to go through with this, or you have to agree with this. Asta relies on the euphemism transition care when she means chemical and surgical sex change services, mutilation, castration, that's how I'd add to that as well, are neither medically necessary nor life-saving, but are instead elective, cosmetic, and experimental. Asta flippantly refers to my detransition as changing course, implying I merely took a wrong turn rather than having doctors affirm my confusion with experimental medicine. I love her. She's going in. She says I returned to my female identity, but being female is not an identity. It's just something that she was. Let's say that. It's the biological reality of half the human population is something that I could never escape despite the fact that when I was 13, 15, doctors gave me puberty blockers, hormones, and removed my breast to try to mold me into something that superficially resembled a boy. Asta neglects to mention the vocal European detransitioners and how European medical societies have backed off gender-affirming care after conducting systematic reviews of evidence and finding that the risk outweigh the purported benefits. Again, a lot of this stuff, they like to just say this stuff, regurgitate it, if you will, like it's fact, but a lot of this stuff is debatable when you start getting to the nitty-gritty. She used outdated statistics on detransition, which includes studies on adults rather than adolescents like me under the gender-affirming model of care. These studies also had serious methodological flaws and a high loss to follow-up rate. It's just like the COVID stuff. Stop accepting these guys' words for everything. And she's providing receipts. I love it. Another statistic she likely used was from a study about detransition that only included trans people. Participation in the study was limited to only those who detransitioned in the past, but still identified as trans. Again, not people like me. She's providing links to every statement that she's making. If Asta had researched the topic properly, she would have discovered a recent U.S.-based comprehensive review of medical records that found 30% of teens and young adults had discontinued gender-affirming care after 4 years. That is a high number in terms of the percentage. Another U.S. study from this year that challenges the notion that detransition is rare found that 29%, basically 30%, of youth changed their request for hormone treatment, surgery, or both of them. Another study from a UK primary care practice found that 12.2% of those who had started hormonal treatments either detransitioned or documented regret, while the total of 20% stopped the treatments for a wider range of reasons. And again, when you consider these are statistically significant, even if it was one, to be fair, it wouldn't, even if it was zero. I mean, look, it shouldn't be up for dispute. Like, such a drastic decision like that should not be made and if, made effective like it is and cutting these children's stuff off for youth. Like, it should be why are we arguing this? That should be a no-brainer. A new study found that 75% of us did not report their detransition to their providers. This creates a false impression that they were satisfied with transition. Norway doctors confirmed that detransitioners updating their providers is not a given. And it goes on and it goes on. She's just going all the way in. The idea that there are only a few of us is silly. We are all over the web, but it's difficult. It's difficult to travel and testify. Maybe to travel and testify. The criticism and hit pieces from the New York Times is not easy to deal with. It's not easy to rehash details of your greatest mistake. There have been many instances of detransitioners getting overwhelmed from the response to their story and deactivating their social media accounts. Hundreds more reside in support groups and remain anonymous, not wanting the stigma and negative attention. Lawmakers shouldn't have to restrict sex changes to adults, but U.S.-based medical organizations are turning a blind eye. So she's saying, like, basically saying that only adults being able to make that decision. It should be. You're right. And she's completely correct. Like, the fact that there even needs to be legislation on that is insane. This should be a no-brainer for rational human beings that this is just, it's just not a thing. It's not a thing you seek, but here we are living in the clown world. Big shout out to Chloe Cole. Like I said, had the luxury of being on a show with her when she really first started to come out with her story. And I hate to hear stuff like this is happening even regularly, semi-regularly, or at all to youth. And it's a fundamental issue. But we're dealing with literal demons, unfortunately, because you have folks that are saying it with a straight face that this is something that not only people should aspire to do, children should aspire to have it done to them in the event that they are dealing with whatever mental issues that is that they're having that makes them think that they are boys trapped in women's bodies or vice versa. It's just a crime. But these are evil people that think that that stuff is okay. And they have now become comfortable to just say it out loud with absolutely zero consequence because, well, that's how fast things accelerate. You have to knock this stuff right where it stands because if you give them an inch, they take the mile, and here we are. Just imagine 10 years ago, 2013, having this conversation with any rational human being. You'd be like, you're crazy as hell if you think that, number one, this is going on or that this should go on. You'd probably be in prison for even suggesting it. Yet here we are.
If you enjoyed this video and want to support other content, please become a member at ericdjuly.com. This is my own unique platform that replaced my Patreon. Our Ultra Max, which is our highest tier, gets free shipping domestically even with Rippaverse orders and are able to redeem the Creators Edition copy of ISOM #1. You can move up and down tiers or cancel at any time. Also visit Rippaverse.com. This is my comic book company that launched a $3.7 million campaign. We appreciate your support.